Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone. And this is the second video of work permit receiver training relevant to Saudi Aramco pre-qualification. Requirements which you need to fulfill, because no one can be like approved WPR until you certify, until you achieve third-party certification with 80% marks minimum. Then on the other side, you need to make sure you achieve Saudi Aramco exam as well. So then they will approve you as a work permit receiver. So for the second video and the training relevant to the second book of this WPR series is all about confined space, which is always, we all know, is a dangerous place. And that is why no one can enter until you have a special permit. And with this series, the purpose is just to support the upcoming WPRs or even the existing experienced WPRs. And to be very honest, a time will come, Aramco will start allowing us to do always the online trainings and make sure, especially for the experienced WPRs. But let me just mention here, to be very honest, there wouldn't be any need of WPRs if confined spaces are not there. Because of these dangerous places, we all know confined space is a place which is not designed for human occupancy or have some limited entry or exit, or maybe some toxic gases or, lack of oxygen, a place where you will not get sometime the required oxygen as well. So that is why it is important to, understand the real crux of this particular confined space entry book, which I always call it's kind of a procedure as well. And procedure means you can't implement until you give a proper training. That is why Saudi Aramco gave authority to the third-party training providers, to make sure you guys get 4 days training, achieve with 80% marks. And with this strong filter, later on, another exam by Saudi Aramco directly. So they can fulfill the purpose to get the right person for the right job. So let's start our today's training by understanding the terminal objective. First of all, remember this book is derived based on this GI 2.100 and 2.709, and also the construction safety manual has also been used. So what we have to learn, or what are the key learning objectives? First of all, you must be able to define and identify a confined space, like the state of the requirements of the confined space entry program. And also the third objective of this training is define the requirements to plan and prepare a confined space entry. And the number 4 is identify work hazards and control measures. Even in the first book, like hazard recognition and control, that was all about hazards identification and control measures to be placed or to implement, wherever needed. So let me repeat again for a keynote. 4 objectives are there. Number 1, we must be capable how to define, how to identify confined space. What are the key requirements for CSC program? And most importantly, how you're going to fulfill the planning and preparation requirements of CSC, like confined space entry. And the last one, as usual, the work hazards and control measures. So let's start with part number 1, like 1.1. So confined spaces, as I always mention, please start thinking in your mind, what is a confined space? Forget about Saudi Aramco definitions. Just your experience or your understanding sometime would be more technical and logical. Otherwise, of course, we have Saudi Aramco theories in front of us, right? So as per Saudi Aramco, what is a confined space? It's large enough to allow workers to enter and perform work. and has limited or restricted means of entry or exit. So as an examiner, might be he can create a question, a confined space is, the confined space has dash or dash means of entry or exit. So that means limited or restricted means of entry or exit. Or confined space has limited or restricted means of dash or dash. So he can give multiple options by fill in the blanks, or maybe he can create, true and false actually. Like he can say confined space has not limited or restricted means of entry or exit. So just by using the word not, he made that sentence wrong, right? So another important sentence about confined spaces, remember, it's not designed for human occupancy, and also contains or has the possibility to contain a hazardous atmosphere, maybe toxic gases like H2S, carbon monoxide, ammonia, some other toxic gases, even, containing a lot of recognized serious safety or health hazards. In the first book, I hope you remember, there are two categories or two types of hazards, like safety hazards or health hazards, and there were five subcategories of five subcategories for safety hazards and five subcategories for health hazards. Now, what is confined space entry? Just for a quick note, remember, entry of any part of the body into a confined space would be considered a confined space entry. And it's also need to be includes all periods of time when the confined space is occupied. That is why we have CSC, like, the standby man who make sure to fulfill this CSC log sheet by everyone, like what is the badge, what I mean is the employee code number, and most importantly, the date, the time in, time out, and why he's going inside, And the standby man also need to make sure the person is fully authorized and trained to enter inside the confined space to perform the job. Now, since this part also relevant to how we're gonna identify confined spaces, let's take few examples. Look at the pictures, like we have columns and vessels, storage tanks, pipelines and wall boxes, manholes, ventilation ducts, boiler steam generators. These are some examples: heat exchangers, civil sumps and pits, barge compartments, and remember, any excavated area deeper than 4 feet would also be considered a confined space, so require the permit for sure, as per Saudi Aramco requirements. So you can see a few videos on YouTube or go to OSHA website. So of course you will get some better understanding what kind of incidents going to happen, like if someone is doing painting inside a confined space and not taking care of electrical connections, or and there is a chance of spark, and immediately, and to be very honest, in confined space you don't get second chance mostly, because there is a abrupt reaction of different kind of elements, and it's hard to run away from confined space once things would be out of control. So that's why we need to be proactive. We need to understand what is a confined space, how it looks like. Examples should be in our mind. And in oil and gas industry, basically, mostly you will find confined spaces everywhere. Like you have pipelines, you have GOSP, you have oil rig sites, even, plenty of manholes. So the same like mentioned earlier. So complete this exercise A, but make sure you think this exercise must be in your mind like an exam, and then see either you can give the right answers with 100% accuracy. So if you face any problem, just the moment I'll upload this video on my channel, training zone, so you can give and comment, you can ask plenty of questions, so I'll be replying there also. Otherwise, as usual, you can note down my WhatsApp number 00966 59 So I'll be happy to help you just to make you successful, inshallah, as a excellent work memory saver. No, the confined space entry program, that is the second part of this book. So let's try to understand. First of all, remember this is Proponent Department's local program. And in advance, the identify confined spaces must be part of this program. Again, proactively, you need to identify hazards of confined spaces, and that should also be part of this program. And developing confined space entry plans. So once you have a data, like you know how many confined spaces are there, what type of confined spaces are those confined spaces, and of course, in advance, you'll be familiar what type of hazards are associated to these confined spaces, and accordingly, you will be capable to prepare CSE plans. And according to the plans, automatically you'll get some insights, what are the training requirements and qualifications and rescue procedures. That is why, Saudi Aramco, before you start any project, they ask you HAP hazard identification plan along with ERP, emergency response plan. Now, confined space entry permits are mandatory before entry where? Before entry within the confined spaces of Saudi Aramco or confined spaces within a Saudi Aramco facility. Now, confined spaces are a project site, so you required permits for sure, it's mandatory requirements. So zero tolerance requirement, in other words. Now, once we have plans and we know the confined space is a danger zone, so of course, we need the right team members, the right person for the right job and we need to allocate them clear roles and responsibilities. Like especially, let's start with issuer and receiver. Issuer means from customer side, like Saudi Aramco side, and receivers means from the supplier side. And that means you, after passing this third-party certification and then exam and getting this third-party certification, and then later on you achieve Aramco exam, you will be the approved, Saudi Aramco approved work permit receiver. So look at your importance. You'll be working along with Saudi Aramco. You'll be signing along with Saudi Aramco issuer. So it's important for you to understand what are your major responsibilities. So number one responsibility you have, identify which permits are required. So even though the Aramco guys, they are quite familiar, what type of permits they'll allow for a certain activity. If it is, if there is a chance of ignition, so they'll go for hot work permit. If there is no chance of ignition, or it's an ordinary simple activity, then cold work permit could be there. But if it is a confined space, of course, confined space entry permit is the first top requirement which you need to fulfill. And if you need to isolate or drain out some of the lines, then there is another permit, EOLB, like equipment opening, line break. So what you truly need to do is make sure you are capable to conduct a joint site inspection, identify and document hazards and precautions that permit forms. Like you are going for joint site inspection and you are identifying plenty of hazards, but unfortunately, if you don't document or you don't put precautions on the permit forms, it will not fulfill the purpose. And complete the hazard analysis checklist. That is also part of the permit forms now. Attach additional forms to the permit if required. And now, after issuers and receivers know the management responsibility. That means, that is why I always say, or WPR, you are the front leader. So no one can start the project until you sign the permit along with Saudi Aramco. So once you have done your part, then management will develop CSE program, like confined space entry program, and develop and review CSE plans, identify training and qualifications, and of course, they will mandate trainings and restrict confined space entry only to the authorized or trained personnel. Designate confined space entry supervisors. That is also the major responsibility of management to designate CSE supervisors. And that is why we also provide CSE supervisor third-party training, because previously, mostly, the issuer, the CSE supervisor or fire watcher was being provided by Saudi Aramco, but now they are guiding to the suppliers and instructing them to bring your professionals. Since we are giving you a project, so you bring your competent team members, like CSE, supervisor, fire watcher, standby man, even signal man, your forklift operator, your crane operator, your rigger. So this is how things are moving around along with Saudi Aramco, some of the leadership support you. Now, provide equipment required for safe confined space entry. That is another responsibility of management. And they are also responsible to conduct drills and emergency scenario, because practice makes a man perfect. So we truly need to test our plans, especially the drills, evacuation maps or evacuation drills must be there to see how our employees behave, during emergency scenarios, and are they behaving as per our plans? We truly need to test. Now, confined space entry supervisor, what are their responsibilities? I hope you remember the confined space entry supervisors are being hired by the management. And now that is why it is clearly mentioned, assigned by the issuer, decides if conditions are acceptable for entry. So he's a decision maker. He authorizes entry. A powerful person. Let me give you an example. Sometimes you have responsibilities, but no authorities. It's nothing. And sometimes you have responsibilities, even authorities, but unfortunately, no required resources. So how come you can get the desired results? And the same way, what is the best formula? Make sure you are responsible, you have certain authorities, and you also got the required resources from your company, then you'll be accountable. So remember this formula. Then you can't give any excuse. If you get better responsibilities and trainings against your, and also you have certain authorities, and on the other side, required resources are also well provided, then make sure you always need to bear in mind that you are now accountable. You can't give any excuse. And the CSE supervisor is also supervises the entry operations and the stopper. He's a stopper as well, like entry if required. Generally the work permit issuer. So CSE supervisor can be the work permit issuer as well. Now, reviews entry plan, communicator. He's a communicator as well. So what he communicates, the plan and entrance and the standby man. So he will be responsible to communicate the CSE plan with entrance and standby man. So standby man can be one, can be several, as per the design or as per the requirement of confined space entry. Now, implementation of permits and plans would also be there. So training of, he's an implementer as well. So training of entrance and standby man. So he must be acting as a trainer as well. Designate trained standby man. So he would be responsible to designate who will be the standby man. Generally issue CSE permits. Provides manpower and coordinate activities of multiple crews. Maybe at one side, different projects are going on. So instead of hiring CSE supervisor for each project, might be Saudi Aramco would have one CSE supervisor and he'll be monitoring to different projects. But now they have changed the criteria. So mostly the supplier is responsible to bring CSE supervisor, and probably for each project now separately. Now provides manpower and coordinate activities on multiple crews. Check isolation, purging, and gas test results. So he must be capable to check proper isolation, purging, and gas test results. Still going on. That's why I told he's very much responsible person, monitors the confined space activity, ensures logs are completed like CSE log sheets, ensures PP is provided and used, provide communication equipment, provides immediate response equipment, emergency rescue capabilities, stops confined space entry when necessary. So these were the major responsibilities of confined space entry supervisor. Now, since he deployed, the standby man, so let's understand what are the responsibilities of a standby man. Standby man, basically he reviews the entry plan and permits, understand possible hazards, and maintains entry log and monitors activities inside and outside the confined space, maintains two-way communication, that's his major responsibility, and also notify person in the event of an emergency. Because he's standing outside, have no other responsibility, so he can immediately inform to the the entrance working inside the confined space if there is any emergency. Note in some cases, yes, standby man may be assigned as a fire watch, but not frequently. Remember, the standby man does not leave the entry point. That means no other job, never enters the confined space, primary responsibility, no other duties. Order entrance to evacuate when an unsafe condition develops, an entrant display unusual behavior, effects from hazard exposure. Now, if a standby man has leave the area, no relief is provided, you are fully, as an entrant, you are fully empowered to evacuate the space. So that means you are not going to work without a standby man. And even if he's have some urgency or is going somewhere, the relief must be provided, the backup must be provided. And if there is a hot work permit, the standby man and the fire watcher already agreed. If you have a CSE permit, even the CSE supervisor, standby man, they are also agreed in advance. Who would be these guys? So let's understand your responsibilities as an entrant. Make sure you are first of all a trained worker who will go into a confined space to perform assigned work. You must be capable to review all permits and review entry plan, check work and site preparation, understand potential hazards in the confined space. So you must be capable to identify the potential hazards in a confined space. You must be trained how to use PPs and never enters until what? Safety requirements are in place. Clearly understand work assignment. That's another important element. And maintains communication with standby man, alerts the standby man and other entrants to exit when order to evacuate is given or warning signs or symptoms of exposure develop. Emergency alarm is activated. So these are the three conditions when standby man have to alert to the entrance. So complete exercise B, but consider it like an exam. So make sure you achieve 100% marks. That means 0 mistake must be there. Okay, so the third part of this book is CSE planning and preparation. So until now, we were just understanding what is confined space, how it looks like examples. And then we also discuss, some kind of responsibilities starting from issuer and receivers, then management. And later on, we understood what are the responsibilities of CSE supervisor, and most importantly, the standby man also, and the entrant. Now we are going to talk about the CSE planning and preparation. Now the planning, first of all, start thinking in your mind, why plan? So as per Aramco, to assess possible hazards and control measures, we truly need a plan, but who plans? Proponent department or contractor? And planning review, what must be part of, what are the key elements of planning? And if you miss any of these elements, that means your planning is not done perfectly, or the planning, is not productive, missing some elements. So make sure you clearly understand what are the key elements, and these must be considered while you're planning. Like number one is review scope of work, clear scope of work, what exactly you are going to perform for Saudi Aramco. Now perform a hazard evaluation of space and surrounding area. You need to specify space and prepared in advance. Use what if scenarios for emergency procedures. Scope of work must be clearly defined. Identification of hazards must be part of that planning. Locate and identify method of each isolation point. locate and identify method of each isolation point. In advance, you need to plan how you're going to isolate and how many points are there. Procedures for cleaning, purging, or ventilation, like procedures for cleaning might be water wash or steaming or purging. You'll use nitrogen, or ventilating, maybe mechanical ventilation, or you'll use a blower fan or something, which can help you to remove some toxic elements or getting some right set of oxygen while you're working in a confined space. So ventilation is also critical. Entry and exit requirements must be part of your planning. How are you going to get enter? How are you going to come out from the confined space? Pedestrian and vehicle barriers must also be part of your planning. Still going on, fall protection plans should also be considered during your planning phase. Types of frequency of gas testing, either you are going to do it after 10 minutes or 30 minutes or continuously as per the nature of your project, or you will be following only Saudi Aramco, the minimum standard, like gas testing after every 2 hours. Now, PP's requirements need to be considered during the planning phase. Equipment required to do work, emergency response procedures. Plan must be available for review. Now, once your planning is done, now pre-entry preparation, you must need to understand what are the pre-entry preparation steps, So pre-entry preparation is like a review plan with a work crew, like kind of a toolbox meeting. Perform a hazard evaluation of space and surrounding area. So take a round and see if there is any hazard, nearby your space or surrounding area. Implement control measures. Rescue plan must be in place before entry. And if only Saudi Aramco employees are involved, these are some of the steps, like operations can receive permits. Every entry must have a CSE supervisor. Entrance must be physically fit for entry. So standby man assigned by CSE supervisor. Communication equipment is mandatory. Fire extinguisher must be there. So maybe the examiner can create a question here. If only Saudi Aramco employees are involved, who can receive the permit? So the options are operations, contractor, WPR, WPI. So make sure you understand the right answer. Like operations can receive the permits. Now, once your pre-entry preparation is done, now make sure you understand the entry preparation requirements, like ensure the permits are issued, and then you need to prepare the job site, isolate work site using signs and barricades. And how we're gonna isolate, we'll discuss in detail, in our third book, like lockout diagram and isolation. Check entry and exit points, entry equipment, communication equipment, initial response and equipment, confined space entry checklist. So you can use this specific checklist for complex entry. If you go back and see your book, confined space entry book, and the last page having 27 points checklist of relevant to confined space entry. So hazard analysis checklist from permit to most other cases. This is the example of a confined space entry checklist. Don't say always yes, 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 yes. And if you're saying yes, make sure it is done. It is perfectly, it's a true yes, not the fake yes, not the, formality, why is a yes is there. And make sure if you are ticking like not applicable, make sure you have some technical justifications also why it is not applicable. Yes, hazard analysis checklist, again, yes, no, or not applicable. So be more careful. Each point is very much valuable. So only tick, tick, tick will not solve the issue, because it's a legal document and you as a receiver are also signing along with Saudi Aramco issuers. That's why I told you, this permit, once you signed, it became like a legal document. And if you are just like ignoring few things and like the both parties, then of course the victim would be the workers who are going to work in the confined space. So confined space entry preparation still going on. No obstruction at the entry point. Make sure the entry points are quite clear. Post warning signs and permits. Isolate and ventilate. Gas test as per CSE plan. Issue proper PPs. Use CSE checklist. Yes, you need isolation. There are certain energy sources like electrical. You need lockout tagout for electrical. For mechanical, again, LOTO is easier to use. And then hydraulic and pneumatic equipment, you need to depressurize because these are the pressures like hydraulic and pneumatic. So any pressure, you need to depressurize. Now, for draining, what you need to drain? Hazardous materials, you need to drain. Cleaning, it can be water wash, it can be steaming. For purging, you can use nitrogen. So you can see some videos related to confined space, especially how things can go out of control, you know, if oxygen level is more than 23.5% or even above than that. So complete exercise C, but make sure no errors, no mistake. Consider these exercises like your exam. Now, the last part of this book is all about CSE work, hazards and controls. Like confined space hazards, what hazards can be there? Engulfment, that means the entry point or the overall confined space is filled with something and you are unable to come out. So temperature, extreme temperature, electrical hazards can be there, mechanical, noise above than 85 decibels, slip, slips and fall, poor lighting, atmospheric, configuration of confined spaces, external activities like heavy equipment, exhaust fumes. Oxygen deficient atmosphere could also be there. Consumption, displacement, flammable atmosphere means hydrocarbons and byproduct of work. So these are some of the hazards associated to confined space. Still going on, toxic atmosphere, maybe hydrogen sulfide like H2S, more than 10 ppm, or confined space, carbon monoxide, above than 35 ppm, or radioactive material, NORM, naturally occurring radioactive materials, and mercury found in crude refining vessels. Now he can create a question here. NORM stands for what? Naturally occurring radioactive materials, and mercury found in dash, or dash found in crude refining vessels. So he can give different options and make sure you remember the right answer. What are the external hazards? Because there are internal hazards. Now we are going to discuss external hazards. So such as combustion engines, equipment opening line break, other line opening activity could also be there, like hydrocarbon sampling is going on, loading, unloading operations, overhead crane lifts. So that means two type, internal and external hazards. We all need to identify, and really important to understood as well. Now, control measures examples, make sure you do not store inside the space. Flammable or combustible materials do not store inside the space. You have to remember. Compressed gas cylinders, we can't store inside the confined space. And sources of ignition, follow hot work permit rules. Equipment shall meet electrical classification for the area, and fire protection equipment available. And ground air movers or prevent static buildup. Now, what other control measures? For electrical shock, we use GFCI on tools and equipment like ground force circuit interrupter, or UL listed or FM approved equipment like underwriter laboratories or factory mutual approved equipment. So these are the trademarks, and in other words, the protection marks. Cord protection is also critical. Power failure resulting in loss of inside lightning must also be considered. What other control measures are there? Preparation. You know, this is the number one step. For preparation, make sure you drain out. What you need to drain out? All hazardous materials. You can add one more process, maybe cleaning or water wash for steaming. Otherwise, go for nitrogen purging to remove all toxic fumes, and make sure the area is fully cool, you know, the temperature should go down. Now the cleaning, yes, cleaning can be done with water wash or steaming. Now isolate, how we can isolate? Lockout, tag out, like LOTO, or we can use blinding or disconnection. So blinding and disconnection, basically these are acceptable, you know, isolation methods for confined space. For ventilation, it can be mechanical supply or position of equipment. Make sure ground equipment, cooling, exhaust ventilation, natural ventilation. Yes, we need to monitor some of the gases like oxygen minimum and maximum, H2S, LEL like lower explosive limit, and carbon monoxide. Minimum these four elements must be tested, you know, by your authorized gas tester. And frequency of testing, before first entry, you need to make sure you are testing the atmosphere after the breaks and also whenever the conditions change. And periodic intervals like after every 2 hours. So some of the informations, to be very honest, you need to memorize, and some of the information is all game of your concepts to be clear, technically, logically, and in a sequence. Of course, you'll be fully capable, inshallah, to solve the exam, and even you'll be the best WPR later on, inshallah. Still control measures are going on. Initial gas test when ventilation shut down. Acceptable entry working conditions must be there. If anything is dangerous, you are empowered to say, no, I can't get enter. Continuous monitoring when required as per the nature of your project or the conditions. Evacuation of the space is important. What are the limits? Identify gases to be sampled, conduct gases from outside entry point. So conduct gas test from outside the entry point. Verify if acceptable to enter, use proper PPs to enter space, conduct gas tests within space. And this is an important table, and you know, several questions the examiner can raise from here, or he can create plenty of questions just by using this one slide, you know. So make sure you have better understanding. And let me just mention, first of all, about LEL, like combustible gases or vapors. Any reading above 0% LEL, no hot work allowed, as per Saudi Aramco. 5 to 10% LEL, breathing apparatus must be used. 10% LEL or above, no work or confined space entry allowed. So these three lines relevant to LEL. Now, about H2S. 10 ppm or above, breathing apparatus must be used. So below 10 ppm, for 8 hours, we don't need breathing apparatus, but at some level, I noted Saudi Aramco still provides SABA, or, you know, they enforce supplied air breathing apparatus, or at some level, maybe they will not allow even 2 ppm is there, because what they believe, maybe this is a starting point, and later on this H2S, you know, can be accelerated actually. So that's why they take it so serious. And accordingly, they take their decisions. But remember, 10 to 100 ppm, division head must sign the permit, and 100 ppm above, no work or confined space entry not allowed. This is all relevant to H2S. Now, oxygen, if it is less than 20%, breathing apparatus is important to use. And if it is 35 to 1000 ppm, breathing apparatus must be used. So 1000 ppm or above, no confined space entry allowed. So guys, let me repeat again. If you will not remember all these important informations, it would be truly harder for you to give the answer during your exam. So now it is up to you how much time you spend and how logically and technically you understand, you know, these information, especially about this slide. Now, important limits to know. This is another way to remember breathing apparatus. When do we need to use? When oxygen is less than 20% or flammable gases are at above 5% and less than 10% LEL. Carbon monoxide is at or above 35 ppm less than 1000 ppm, or H2S is at or above 10 ppm and less than 100 ppm. Or other toxic gases are above their TLV, threshold limit value, or at or below ideal H, immediately dangerous to life or health level. Confined space entry is not permitted if the atmosphere is oxygen is above 23.5%, flammable gases are at or above 10%, carbon monoxide is at or above 1000 ppm, H2S is at or above 100 ppm, and other toxic gases are above their ideal H level, immediately dangerous to life or health. Yes, after that, we need personal protective equipment. What personal protective equipment can be there? Self-contained breathing apparatus like SCABA, supplied air breathing apparatus means SABA, air purifying cartridge, respirator, coverall, FRC like fire-resistant clothing or flame-resistant clothing. Safety helmet is critical to use. Eye and face protection, and make sure you have hearing protection if there is a chance of highly noise, like above than 85 decibel. Safety shoes or boots, make sure they are anti-slippery as well. Gloves and full body harness with lanyard for rescue. Now, issue CSC permit. Once you are going to enter, make sure the CSC permit is issued. Control access, have a standby man and CSC log sheet, record enter and exit of the personnel, conduct atmospheric gas testing, and perform the required work. So make sure the permit is issued, access is there, record entry and exit of the personnel means whoever is going inside. To be very honest, the standby man must be fully confident to stop each individual and ask, what are your batch number? Why you are going inside? Okay, fill this CSC log sheet and fill all the information like time in, time out, and also get signature, and perform the required work. Yes, during work, of course, we need to make sure some better communication. So it can be face-to-face like verbal or hand signals. Otherwise, rope system like oath method, one tug, okay, can be to ask if okay and to answer. 2 tugs means at once, give me rope. Still, I need to go further. 3 tugs, take a rope, I'm coming back. And 4 tug means I need help. Now, radios, or CSC log in and out sheet. How are we gonna use this log sheet? Make sure the work permit number is there, page 1 of 2 or 1 of 5 or whatever unit, location, standby man, the name and the badge number, name of the person entering the confined space, what is his badge number, signature, date, time, timeout, and job assignment. And no harm to add signature as well. So that would help, to understand who is inside, and even head count would be easier. And when you close the project, you can, double check that all the guys came out. Stop work, when we can stop work, there must be a reason to stop work. And logically, technically, you have to prove that the reason was solid. That is why you stop the work. Procedures for re-entry after breaks and emergency conditions, you can stop work, atmospheric testing requirements. Prepare for rescue, like rescue team and equipment availability, department and site procedures, site-specific procedures, team awareness and knowledge, training and rescue drills, and never attempt a rescue until you are fully trained and equipped. As I told you earlier in the first video, like hazard recognition control, I told you don't do anything you're not trained for, especially in oil and gas, especially at Aramco site. Because if something goes wrong, God forbid, so then it will be firing back on your shoulder, So make sure you have a better understanding about emergency response, like atmosphere during the rescue. Consider to be immediately dangerous to life or health. Standby man, do not rescue. So remember that one. Standby man, do not rescue. Now, notify emergency team and CSC supervisor. And once the project is done, now restoration, return to operation, account for all entrance like head count, remove tools and equipment, and close and seal manholes and flanges. Make sure all valves back to operation mode. Remove isolations and lockout tag from all points, wherever you put this isolation or lockup tag out. That is why it is important to prepare a complete list of isolation and LOTO points. Hand over equipment use checklist. You can see some carbon monoxide relevant videos through YouTube or even at OSHA websites. So you can complete exercise D. So this is all about confined space entry, the second book of work permit receiver. So stay tuned for the third book of lockup tag or hold tag or isolation. So I'll prepare one video for your awareness, and I hope it will help you up. So please, if you believe it is beneficial for the community, you can subscribe my channel, Training Zone, and also share it, and it will help me to, motivate myself to keep this momentum on a regular basis, inshallah, to reach you further. And I always believe sharing is caring. So same suggestion I have for all of you, please don't hide knowledge. Whatever you are familiar with, try to share with others. So it will boost up your confidence. Also is Sadqa Jariyah, as well as, inshallah, by serving humanity, of course, you'll be happy, Allah will be happy also. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you very much. Have a great day.